everyone goes, oh, if I start a channel right now, who's going to watch it? If I start a pod, who's going to listen? As if the entirety of all of the people on the planet have already been siloed away. They have their channels and never going to find another one.
Yeah.
But then you remember that there are a lot of lonely people, and they are actually looking for real connection, real creators all the time. And that is actually the thing that carries them through their day, is that show that finally drops, or that creator that finally does a makeup tutorial. And they live for that because there's maybe not much else going on. And I think anyone that listens to this podcast is probably to some degree a high performer, expects a lot out of their life. You run a really successful business. And so we are going to look at the world through our lens, the lens really we only have to look at it through. And so I think, oh, well, everyone must look at video the way I do, as an example. And then I go to Costco and I see all of these creatures, these people that are so different from me, that live these crazy lives. They have the least interesting conversations possible. And they are...
We love people.
I know I sound really critical, but I'm making an illustration. If you go to a McDonald's or a Walmart, you're going to see...
It's a big, big world, and there's all sorts of people living all sorts of lives. Yeah, that's for sure.
But the commonality is they all have that phone.
That's true.
And they all have YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. So when I deploy a piece of content or one of my clients' videos, they go out, they go, oh, yeah, they kind of can feel like, oh, when are we going to have that really big moment and get that 1 million view video? Well, listen, there are people looking for you. Maybe we just haven't found how to get in front of them yet, which is what we constantly calibrate and iterate. But the point is, you can think that everybody wants whatever it is you're delivering, or maybe you think that nobody does. I think most people are cynical and they go, I'm not going to start my show or my videos because who wants to see it? Because I haven't seen that performance. The reality is that there are so many people all using smartphones, all using the same apps, and they live wildly different lives from you and I, and their inputs are different and the things they like are different. You have no idea where your audience could come from, but there are hundreds of millions. There's 3.8 billion active users on Facebook every single week.
Amazing.
And that number is staggering. We have this problem with large numbers. It's hard to quantify in our heads, but that is so many freaking people. And all you have to do is dig deep on who you are, what your superpowers are, take an inventory of what it is you're good at or you like, or you're a subject matter expert at, whether it be the Kardashians, and you can really make and carve out your own niche. And I think that that's just the point that I champion probably 20 times a day. Yeah. And so I really admire you doing a show like this, because it's people know you in the space, in the industry, they like you. You have something that people would want to hear and listen. You have access to cool guests. And I think that that's going to be in 2025, a trend that the courageous will embrace more, is that you do have a message. People can, find you, and they are interested in what it is you have to say. And even if you have to make 100 bad videos and bang your head against the wall for a while, if you're persistent, you will find the thing that people resonate with. And that is the opportunity that we sit in, even if there's AI videos that scam you out of $800,000.
Oh, geez. Yeah. No, that's 100% true. And to me, the amazing thing is, and it's hard because the numbers are so huge, is the free instant distribution. I mean, that's worth so much. I mean, pre-internet days, you had to make DVDs and you could print 1,000 copies of DVDs for maybe $600, and you had to hand them out to people and store them, and they would have to put them in a DVD player to watch it and sit down and press this. But now it's just they swipe up on TikTok and they're seeing your video or they're not seeing your video. Yeah. And I think in a way that's what scares people to get involved to a degree, is it's just oh, nobody's looking at my video. It's not distribution. I mean, it's there. Mr. Beast has the exact same distribution I have, but there's a lot of things going into it.
Yeah, that's a great point though.
But yeah. And I don't know, but it's true. I do think not everybody has a personality for him, just unfortunately. But
Lex Friedman's a good example of someone that has kind of a white bread dull.
He is actually he's interesting.
He's got this dry.
He would never be in broadcast. If he auditioned for any news service or anything, he would be thrown out in the first round, maybe even as soon as he walked in the door. And he's one of the biggest broadcast media in the world.
The following is a conversation with Mark Zuckerberg. It's just he's this PhD toting
every rule
AI guy at MIT, and he's so dull. He just interviewed Zelensky. He's had Elon Musk on 4 times.
He's got tons of viewers.
And so he's a subject matter expert delivering it in this dry Russian way, but people love him. Do you know why? Because he's goofy, and he lets you see his goofiness a little bit.
Well, and he's authentic. He is being the way he is. If he tried to if he took a course in public speaking or in acting to be well, don't be so wooden, don't be so dynamic, it would be worse because he would be who he's not. He's being somebody who's not.
And there's a magic in that. There really is.
It is. And his questions are good. They're precise. They're insightful. So he does a good job on that front. But as far as like, if you were to major in broadcast journalism, he would receive an F. But again, that shows the shift in the medium. And something I like to think about, like when radio used to be TV, like people would watch, The Lone Ranger was a radio show. And then when TV first happened, they were kind of like, well, we'll just take our radio news guy and stick a camera in front of him. But it didn't work.
It didn't work.
We needed a completely different person. And then we're kind of going through that shift now, whereas like all of a sudden, we don't need a Tom Brokaw. You look at any of the major podcasters, none of them are a Tom Brokaw kind of guy. Mm-hmm. They're not like this perfectly coiffed person who's really good looking. You would not see any of them on 60 Minutes ever interviewing somebody.
And the irony too is you see the Don Lemons that leave like big stations and then they try and podcast. And it doesn't work because they're trying to do the same thing that they were doing on broadcast media.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't fold. Like podcasting is authenticity. That's the first thing we talked about today.
Yeah.
And so you'll see these guys completely fold under the pressure because the spotlight is you're naked and laid bare in front of people if you're doing it right. And that's how you really grow is you let people in and see you. And we have this tendency, like you said, there's a veneer, there's kind of this performative layer that we want to put to separate us between them and actually being seen. But that's the power of the medium.
Yeah.
And so it's like the more willing you are, and I talk about this with my clients all the time, the more you're willing to be as real as possible and flub a thing or go on a random tangent about how much you love this type of coat hanger. Like I love trash cans. I'll talk about trash cans because I have this thing about trash cans. I think it's so satisfying. And there's something like super interesting in that. And you're going to see as we move forward that it's an archaic medium at this point. Like the only people that are watching TV are people that have watched TV for 40 years.
Oh gosh, the core demographic for a lot of these cable channels is in the tens of thousands. I mean, again, we're talking about these numbers. I mean, we can't even comprehend 300 million.
That's a fair point.
But you just think like, oh, well, only 10,000 people watch my video or only 1,000 people. Like put that many people in like a room and think how much work it would be to get them into that room. 1,000 people is a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. I mean, like a high school basketball stadium for a good high school be around 2,000 people. So you just spoke to a high school basketball stadium worth of people. A college Division I football team will be 65,000 people. So if you get 60, I mean, that's bananas. So then, and
you convert 2% of that to your product. Hello.
Just a fraction. And 300 million, that is a country. That is a mega country. That is a continent worth of people. That's like the population of Europe.
And if they love you and you've got something to sell, congratulations. You don't need a sales department.
No, you don't. I mean, when you can convert in fact, there's some influencers I started following. They're local and they just started. And basically all they do is they run up Provo Canyon. And they wear running shorts like 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile as they do their run down Provo Canyon into Provo. And now they've started running marathons. Like they just finished the Disney marathon. They dressed kind of Disney princessy and stuff. And they just sold 50,000 sweatshirts.
No way.
An insane amount of sweatshirts.
In Provo.
Yeah, and they have each one of them has 100,000 to 150,000 followers. There's 3 of them, and they're called I can't remember, the Running Crew or something. I wish I could remember their name, but they're not huge. They're not Mr. Beast. When you think about it, though, 150,000 people. That's the size of a mid-sized city.
Yeah,
that's like Indianapolis, and they watch them do their daily run every day, and then they put their saying on a sweatshirt and 50,000 people buy it out of the total 400,000 people are following them. So again, these numbers, especially, I mean, you think if you're a plumbing company or something, they'll probably be the last to get onto this. But if
they're smart, they won't be though.
They won't be. They'll get on it.
And they're the ones that listen to it. Truck drivers listen to it. Blue collar workers, 2A community, they all consume podcasts. And so it really is just a matter of time of them getting that own internal courage and being like, oh, I'm just going to do whatever that thing I do anyways, and I might try and film it.
No, marketing. In fact, a guy I interviewed just a couple of episodes ago, that he's a big wildlife photographer / hunter. And I was like, dude, you should do a hunting wildlife photography video influencer. You're an interesting person. You should do it. And I actually had a former employee in my business who, I won't say his name, but he moved to a rural community and he started posting videos of himself doing fence maintenance on his like small, he didn't have a ranch or anything. You know, his wife is a nurse.
A plot of land, fence repairs in rural, middle nowhere Utah. And he's got 90,000 followers. Again, that is like the rolling tide. You know, that makes him like the University of Alabama, and he does fence repairs, and his wife's a nurse, and he's in his late 50s. Wow.
You know, I mean, again, it's like, you just don't know where the niche is going to be, and who to guess there'd be an audience for doing fence repairs in rural Utah.
I think this has become the Rorschach test of flexibility, because this is so, it changes every single day. In fact, I'll get clients that will have left a previous agency before they start working with us, and they'll tell us about what they were doing, what the agency was doing for them. Some of them are using strategies from 6 months ago. And I'm like, hey man, the cutting edge of that is just, it feels miles away now. But what's worse is I get a lot of, you know, small to medium sized businesses, and their firm they were outsourcing to is running strategies from 3 years ago or 5 years ago. And in the grand scheme of things, if this was the 2000s and someone was saying, oh, we're running a playbook from 1996 or 98, you'd be like, oh, okay, probably still works.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty reasonable to assume, because the sheer velocity that this information river moves at, it wasn't what it, today it's different than what it was then.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's so much, like, that's why kids, like iPad kids, are so different. There are so many more inputs that happen through the eyes, through the ears. The brain gets stimulated and develops in a really specific way where the neuroplasticity results in like a different species of human.
Yeah.
And that's what's really hard to convey. So it's like everybody does have their phones, and an older generation, the 60-year-old, you know, CMO at the company, he and his wife are probably playing Candy Crush and checking Facebook, and they have a use case for it. They have their kind of patterns that they use in the phone. They know how to use it. They FaceTime. They're technologically savvy, but their use case does not speak to the bigger picture that's going on, the way that these trends are developing. And now if you plant, you know, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. And so when you can
better late than never.
Better late than never. Yeah. And honestly, this thing is not, we have not hit critical mass yet. People thought that about YouTube in 2012. You know, when Jimmy was starting his YouTube channel, they're like, oh no, there's all these case studies. It's done. You know, we're putting we've seen all the channels blow up. And so YouTube, everyone's figured it out. Don't start a channel now. Well, can you imagine if you had started a YouTube channel in 2012 and you had grinded it out and made it happen, flexibly pivoted if your angle wasn't working and said, okay, great, I'll try something else. And you were just consistent and gritty. Imagine if you'd started it in 2018. You have, you know, huge streamers like iShowSpeed and Kai Cenat that are like Gen Z icons that are closing $10 million a live stream. And they started in 2021.
Yeah.
So it's like, this illustrates, you know, the fact that all of these things are moving faster than ever. And so it behooves us to grab a corner of it, plant our flag, and be willing to be flexible. And so, like I said, it's like the more that people are willing to go, I don't know what's going on, which is probably the first thing they have to reconcile, say, I don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
You know, what am I doing? I'm shedding a layer of my identity as like, I'm the go-to expert. Well, for sure. But also the circumstances have changed. And now there are new classes of expertise. So whereas before branding would probably fall under the umbrella of marketing, it's totally bifurcated now. Branding and content creation and videos, that's your reputation. And you have to look at that completely differently. You know, most people use Google Ads as a component of their business process. You go to the toll booth of Google Ads, you pay them, you get a lead. That lead can turn into a sale. That sale is trackable. You can architect KPIs around it. And marketers and founders and CFOs, they like that. They like that they can see it and measure it. What we're talking about is this abstract, qualitative thing that turns random Provoites that run down Provo Canyons into people selling 50,000 units. There is no case study.
And they're like 21-year-old girls. I mean, you know.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you reconcile that? How do you put that in a case study? You're like, so it's going to happen all over the place. The point is not that you missed the window. The point is that you're not really going to know how it's going to work, but you've got to figure out your superpower, test and iterate, and then have the courage to just put yourself out there. Or if you don't want to be the face of it, have somebody else. If you're in a company and you say, oh, I'm dry as paper, well, then get an interesting person in there. Get a Gen Z intern, for crying out loud.
I got to tell you, though, if you do that, they will have all the power, though. they will have power on you because they will have the relationship with your clients.
That's a good point too. And that's what athletes and celebrities understood.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like there's a sentiment like with players in the NBA where they know that even
they should just have their own shoe. Why do they need Nike?
Right. Well, and that's the distribution. They handle all the manufacturing.
That's true.
Right?
I know.
But for the most part, they feel as though they work for the NBA. They feel like they have a job.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I have a job. I feel like I have a company.
Yeah.
But like you can be an NBA superstar and still be like, yeah, like I report to the boss or whatever.
Yeah.
And so when you can get enough sufficient leverage, like you said, they're probably going to go and take some courage and take that journey into the unknown. Mm-hmm. And that's happening more and more and more. And so the more you can figure out how to accumulate leverage in an audience, oh, well, I need a case study. I need a blueprint. Sorry, there really aren't any. There are case studies, but there are no blueprints. So you really have to take pieces of everybody else and then find your own path. And that's really hard and abstract and kind of hand wavy to say, but like, dude, that's just the way it is right now.